Okay, so welcome everybody and good afternoon, good morning, Christelle, good night for the folks over the sea. And we are here today to discuss the War of the Scepters. It's our last brown bag for this academic year, and we will get you informed about future events. But today we have Christelle Fischer-Bovet and Syon with us to discuss about the War of the Scepters. We will start with Christelle of the University of Southern California, who will talk about the Ptolemies at war. I will not take any time for the presenters. We will have some time to discuss after their presentations. So, Christelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, let me upload now my screen, my slides. Okay, here we are. Okay, so you see everything, I guess. You need to. Okay. So, well, so my presentation will be about 20 minutes, but if I see I'm really going over, I'll try to skip some parts and keep them for the discussion. So I would like to thank the organizer of the Maccabees Project for inviting me to talk in the seminar, and in particular Roy Sabar for coordinating everything. I really enjoyed the last seminar, so it's really a pleasure and honor to join you. So the task I've been assigned is to give an overview of the War of Scepters, since the Ptolemies are the main protagonists, and next to Janus. There will be maybe little new in what I will say, as the most comprehensive analysis of the war and its sources is still Van Dyck et Ali, the 1989 volume called The Judean, Syrian, Egyptian Conflict of 103-101, a multilingual dossier concerning a war of scepters. So, as you know, Hellenistic history has a component of a complicated genealogical history. So the first half of my paper almost will set the stage, and I will review the main protagonist and their relationship, starting in 116. And so you can, I put the main event in green, and you can follow all the different marriages and sister-wife going from one ruler to another on the slide. So according to Justin, book 39, at the death of Ptolemy VIII, the king would have let his wife Cleopatra III choose which one of their sons should rule. Ptolemy IX's daughter, the second, the elder son, had already been sent to Cyprus as strategos in 118, because Cleopatra wanted to keep him away. That's Pausanias' view, but to me it could also be interpreted as a sign that his father had chosen him as a successor, and he was learning the job. Justin reports that in 116, Cleopatra tried first to put her younger son, the future Ptolemy X, Alexander, on the throne, but the people in Alexandria disagreed, and she had to choose Ptolemy IX to rule with her and her own mother, Cleopatra II, who will soon die. Ptolemy IX sent his younger brother to Cyprus to administrate the island, so in a sense taking his place. But on the dark side, he was forced by his mother to divorce his sister wife Cleopatra IV and to marry another sister, Selene. So you can see that on the slide. Justin tells us that Cleopatra IV was to marry Antiochus IV, so the younger brother among the Seleucids. He was technically about to take the title, and that she decided to bring as a dowry troops from Cyprus, which she took on her side and brought to her new husband. This must have happened around the time he first appeared as king on his coinage, so around 114, 113, and Justin tells us that these troops allowed Antiochus IV to fight on the battlefield against his brother, but he failed and sought refuge in Antioch. And I could say more, and I didn't, if we've discussed that with Scotty Lorber, so about, you know, why this happened, how is that possible? Well, I'll keep that for the discussion if you have questions about how is it that Cleopatra the Fourth could bring that army. Finally, around 114, Ptolemy X took actually the title of king in Cyprus. Since Ptolemy X doesn't react, we can posit that this kingship of was not a problem or a challenge at that point, and it doesn't imply a formal division of the empire. At least that's my point of view. On the Seleucid side, the two royal brothers are also trapped in a dynastic conflict. As you can see, the Ptolemies are already involved in, since Cleopatra the Fourth married Antiochus IX, and Tryphina, another Ptolemaic princess, was married to Antiochus VIII. But both women would soon be murdered in the context of this conflict. I will not expand on that. From then on, Antiochus IX and Antiochus VIII will continuously be at war. At some point, between 111 and 107, Antiochus IX, who was helping the Samaritans at their request, and that Josephus telling us that in book 13, against Hyrcanus, and had already been defeated by Hyrcanus' sons, asked some help from Ptolemy IX, who provided 6,000 men. So it's a kind of a situation that shares parallels with how the War of Scepters actually starts, where a city attacked by the Hasmoneans asks a king for help. A date closer to 107 for this providing troops is more plausible, since Cleopatra the Third upset at her son for this reason, that's what Josephus says, expelled Ptolemy IX from his kingdom in 107. From then on, she reigns with her younger son Ptolemy X, who is back from Cyprus, and Ptolemy IX flees to Cyprus. But his mother sent an army after him. And here there is an interesting note from Josephus, I'll mention at the end if I have time, but he explains that the Jews among the soldiers who were sent to chase Ptolemy IX who actually joined Ptolemy. Yet, wishing to avoid fighting his mother, according to Justin, he fled. When we assume he went to Syria and Seleucia in Pieria, where we have a small fragment from Diodorus, who is kind of floating around, where we think it belongs to this time. There is a fragment that mentions a plot against him that he survived. By 104 at the latest, probably 105, he's back in Cyprus, where he established his own court, but really is hoping by all means to recover the throne of the entire Ptolemaic kingdom. Then at some point before or shortly before 103, or now even thinking during the year 103, Cleopatra, the mother, sent now the wife of Ptolemy, the second wife of Ptolemy IX, Selene, who was still in Egypt, she sent her as a new wife for Antiochus VIII, and she also sent some material aid. So we clearly, now moving to a nicer slide, we have the alliances that are in place, even if in the War of Scepters, the Seleucid kings do nothing. So on the one hand, we have what's called the two bearded men, Ptolemy IX and Antiochus IX. And on the other hand, we have Cleopatra, Ptolemy X, and who are closer to Antiochus VIII, as I just said. And by default, the Hasmoneans, since Antiochus IX is the one king preventing their expansion. So that's the stage. Now, the year 104, 103 were also the time of succession about the Hasmonean brothers, and I will let Danny says more about this point and the date. If Ptolemais, the city, was granted its independence around that time, and I think this is all, we also think it's happened around that time, it would make it even more a target. And indeed, Jannaeus, as soon as king, continues the conquest, and he's after the coastal cities of Ptolemais, Gaza, the territory of Zoilus, you will see on the next slide. So we start the war. Jannaeus attacked Ptolemais no later than early spring 103, which triggers the war. Now, just a survey of the sources that Van Dyck is also giving you. You have traditional literary sources. More interesting are the Greek and Demotic inscriptions. Some are just, giving us a date. So the Serapeum Stele of Memphis will be important for that. The statue of the general Petemutis, which is on the flyer for today, who comes from, who has a statue from Thebes, but comes from the Delta, and the epitaph of the officer Apollonius, who's from Edfu, from an Egyptian family. This group of people of the priestly elite who became members of the Ptolemaic army. So it's typical of that. His father and grandfather also were serving in the army and were from the Egyptian priestly family of the Upper Egypt. And in his epitaph, we have the beautiful title or name of the war that comes in. The poet explain the life of Apollonius, who will die in Syria during that war, and he says, "Sailing along with my father's kinsmen, dear stranger, when a war of scepters came to Syria." Finally, we have 8 Greek and Demotic papyri from Patyrus. So you may wonder why we have these papyri from Upper Egypt. They are written by Egyptian law officers and soldiers who are based in Ptolemais, Mendes, and Pelusium, and we are, it had been debated, but Van Dyck made it clear it's about this war. And some of them, after the war, survived and brought the letters back to their village, and that's where they were found. Unfortunately, they talk a lot about their own life in that village or what is happening, and they are just asking how they are doing each other. So we have not so much, we learn not so much on military operations, and they are also very fragmentary. So I'll bring them in when we learn something. And I start with the war. So, okay, I'll put an alarm so that I don't go, I'll skip a few sections, but here is what is happening briefly. Let me go there. Okay, so, and I follow basically Josephus' account, which is the most extant, and I give you the reference here of book 13, and I will interrupt myself for short comments on chronology, military matters, and sometimes on political decisions. So, as I said, Jannaeus decided to attack Ptolemais. He defeats the inhabitants of Ptolemais in the first battle and then besieged the city. Zoilus, the local ruler of Dora and Straton's tower, joins them with some troops. Since the two Seleucid kings are too weakened by their own fighting, Josephus says they cannot help, thus the inhabitants of Ptolemais ask Ptolemy IX, currently in exile in Cyprus, for help, and they claim that Gaza and Zoilus were on their side and that Sidon and others would join, so he accepts. And we can discuss that, who was with Ptolemy and Ptolemaeus in the discussion after. One of the leaders warned the people in Ptolemais, saying that could bring Cleopatra III in the war. We should not do that. We should not be dependent on Ptolemy. But it's too late. He's already sailing with 30,000 men, both infantry and cavalry. That's the only information really we will have about his army, frustratingly. And his envoys are rejected by Ptolemais, so he's stuck there. Then Zoilus and the inhabitants of Gaza are kind of happy Ptolemy IX is here, and they ask for help, while Jannaeus actually is a bit scared and abandons the siege of Ptolemais. But what he does, he tricks Ptolemy, Josephus tells us. He secretly asks Cleopatra to attack Ptolemy IX. Well, I wonder if he had really to do that. Cleopatra was probably observing the situation. And he makes an alliance with Ptolemy IX. He gives him 400 talents in exchange for eliminating Zoilus. We don't know if it's, killing him, I mean, fully or not, and giving Zoilus territory to Janaeus. And Ptolemy does that. And here we have evidence of a little bit of financial support he may have got at that point. When Ptolemy learns he's been tricked, he leaves soldiers to besiege Ptolemais and then launch an expedition against Judea. Janaeus prepares an army of 50 or 80,000, and here things start, and you can see on the map, Ptolemais sees Azokis in Galilee on the Sabbath, where he captures 10,000 men, and then he fails in Sepphoris, we don't have details, and then he fights at Azophon. And there, I'll skip the details. We hear a lot about the battles, and we know that Ptolemy IX has a tactician with him, Philostephanus, who is important in bringing the victory. We learn about the type of soldiers with long shield. You have here an example from the tomb in Sidon, or with round shield. And we learn about numbers and the disastrous losses at Azophon, either 30,000 or 50,000. Now, I'll just, with numbers, as you all know, we can rarely believe them, and they are clearly inflated. For comparison, Janaeus later has 20,000 Jews and 6,000 mercenaries. Here we hear only about native troops. So they are, far too high numbers. So I think something around 20,000 is probably more reasonable. In comparison, we shouldn't be surprised that it's much smaller than the largest armies, Hellenistic armies ever. Raphia is a reference with 70,000 soldiers on each side. So what Ptolemy does, to me, is really a punitive raid against Janaeus. He doesn't succeed. I mean, he's not attacking really cities. You have these battles, and then he's plundering, and probably he needed money, so he's plundering villages, and we have this description of mass murder and cutting bodies into pieces and boiling them. So there had been excavation near Jerusalem that found bodies with evidence of dismemberment, and there was discussion whether it's connected to Ptolemy's doing or the Hasmoneans, and we can talk about that if you want later. So the next phase of the war is Cleopatra's intervention. She's afraid that Ptolemy's knights will attack Egypt, so she sent a land and sea army. I presume she come by sea, and she appoints the Jews Kelkias and Ananias, the son of Onias, the priest who went to Egypt earlier, as the leader of her entire army. I have some doubt on that they are actually the highest commander. She sends most of her wealth, grandson, everything into Kos because she's afraid. And she sends her son Ptolemy X to Phoenicia with a great fleet, but we don't know more. She gets to Ptolemais and is not welcome, so she has to besiege the city. Around that time, Ptolemy IX leaves Egypt to go to Egypt because he takes the opportunity that the main army are gone. And in a skirmish, because Cleopatra sent troops after him, we learn that Kelkas is actually killed. A note about what the papyri are bringing us here to the table. It's papyrus number 3 from the dossier, where you can see how all the soldiers are greeting each other, and I abbreviated that, and you can see how it's very fragmentary to understand something. But what is important is I'm sending you this letter from the Buat of Ptolemais, which is probably the elevation more than the marsh of Ptolemais. So it means that either they are besieging or they seize the city, and we have a date, which is September 27th, 103. So we are sure that everything must have, I've just described, must have happened by end of September. So that's important. And we also learn that the king went to Damascus, which is an important evidence, and shows that Ptolemy X was participating in the war. And we can assume that Van Dyck, explaining why he does that, he's going to help Antiochus the Eighth to take to take the city, or to get Antiochus the Ninth out. Well, moving forward, Cleopatra sends a portion of her army to Egypt and drives Ptolemy out of the country. So he leaves Egypt and he returns to Gaza. Here you just have a sense of what these 8 papyrus give us in terms of information. So you see a lot of missing, but these 2 texts from Ptolemy are important for dating events. So what does Ptolemy do in Egypt? What did he achieve? Not much. We have some hoards that Cathy Lorber mentions with bronze, Cypriot bronzes. And we have 1 papyrus that could be dated after him, but the complicated story, but the date is not safe. So it could be just dated after 85, when he come back and he's again king in Egypt starting 88. So it seems really that what Josephus says, that he didn't do much, is correct. Okay, the last episode. So Cleopatra takes Ptolemaeus. Jannes comes to her with gifts, and some of Cleopatra's advisors suggest that she should invade the country. But Ananias says that she would commit an injustice by depriving an ally, especially one of his kinsmen. Ananias says that all the Jews would be her enemies. She does not wrong Jannaeus in the end, but makes an alliance with him at Scythopolis. So here we have interesting epigraphic evidence that brings additional details. These Serapeum stele from Memphis tell us that in 102, in February most likely, or in June, Ptolemy X was in Pelusium with his army. So for Van Dyck, it shows that it indicates that Ptolemy X and his troops went back to Pelusium in early 102 to make sure that Ptolemy IX would not attack Egypt from his winter quarters in Gaza. So from then, we just have to assume Ptolemy IX is leaving at the end of the winter, 102, and goes to Cyprus. Interestingly, and maybe not surprisingly, he claims victory. At least that's what we can get from this inscription from Kitium in Cyprus, which is an important naval basis. And you here have the ramps and the reconstruction from the ramps for the warship in Kitium. And you have his members of his army that dedicate altar to Zeus Soter and Athena Nikephoros. So somehow his raid in Judea was celebrated as a victory. But going toward reaching my conclusion, he actually did not accomplish much except his victory at Azophon. He did not keep any places in Judea. He lost Ptolemais to his mother, and he spent a lot of money to pay his army. Yet he celebrated this expedition. Now, the next kind of almost final slide is scary. I was trying to put all these events some way so to facilitate the discussion later. What I just want to say about the army as the last points are that we have only 2 fights, direct fights between Cleopatra and Ptolemy IX, in fact, around Ptolemais, and then when she sent troops after him when he goes to Egypt. And Cleopatra also didn't accomplish much. She just seized Ptolemais. So returning to the debate of, whether she should have invaded Judea, I would like to say that she would have been completely incapable of doing that. And so Ananias' response must come from positive sources on Cleopatra, because it sheds a good light. She appears as someone that, will respect the alliance she just made and is not going to attack now. But I think that she had not the capacity to do that. Some people said that she was afraid from Rome, but Rome was not really intervening during these years. So I think it was not on her mind. What was on her mind that either Antiochus IV or the Ninth or Ptolemy the Ninth, her son, would attack. And we know from Josephus himself a bit earlier that Antiochus VIII himself had renounced to invade Judea by fear of his brother, that his brother would attack him. So to me, she didn't have the capacity. Now, last thing about her troops, we know there had, Judeans, Jewish soldiers with her, and we have this note earlier from Josephus, and we can revisit that from the Jews, some went to Ptolemy before the war, and some, the member of Onias' clan stayed with her. Finally, what also challenges the fact that Ananias and Kelkas were in charge of the whole army is this statue you had on the flyer, and you have this general from the Delta who celebrate his achievement after the war and present himself as the army commander-in-chief, the commanding officer, the superior officer at the head of the army. And you have it's very typical of autobiographic inscription written in hieroglyphic. We have, he presents himself heroic like Montu, Lord of Bravery. He reached the land of Kor, which is Syria, in the company of the queen, so we are sure he's with her. He entered like a divine falcon. He sees the city, so we know that he was part of this group. He massacres tens of thousands, and then he made a great massacres among the children of revolt. That's an allusion to Ptolemy's troop. The great royal wife gave him many gifts, as well as to his father and his army. So to conclude, I mean, we are, it's pretty evident that he was an important member of the army, and we have all evidence of Egyptians in Cleopatra army. So I will stop there and just say that right after we learn that Jannaeus is launching a campaign against Gadara, Hamatus, Raphia, and finally Gaza, we can discuss the complicated matters of the dating of the siege of Gaza later on. But in conclusion, the winner of this war is Jannaeus, and it's a pattern now. You have interdynastic conflict that has for consequences that smaller local actors can get a share of the lion, and Jannaeus is the winner. And I'll stop here. Thank you. And I stop sharing too. There are the references if you are interested.
Thank you so much, Christelle. That was
astonishing.
Yeah. we needed that, I think.
Rest assured. This is why we need historians. I would just say that.
Yeah, sorry, was it a lot?
Oh, it was very welcome. Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, we will, so if you have questions, just remind them. We will proceed to Danny's talk, and afterwards we will have the discussion. So Danny, please, you can share your screen.
Okay, but even before that, I just wanted to say that what I find amazing in the historical account is that we are technically on Seleucid territory. And yet the Seleucid have vanished into thin air. They are not to be seen, not to be heard. They are hiding under the rock. I don't know what they're doing at this time.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Okay, here I go. See my screen?
Yes, you can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Christelle said that Ptolemy IX did not gain very much in this campaign, but we gained a lot by his leaving a very interesting and strange numismatic trail after his campaign. Before we go to the actual coins of Ptolemy IX, just a quick view on Ptolemaic coins that are generally found in Israel. They are basically very quite boring. All you see on them is an eagle. It can be with its head turned left or turned right, or with spread wings or closed wings, one or two eagles, but basically very monotonous coins. But notice that all of them are very well struck, very well centered. All of them are round. And so now when we get to the coins that are the subject of my talk here, they stick out like a sore thumb. Oh, okay. Anything I said on the run-of-the-mill Ptolemaic coins that are routinely found in Israel, these are exactly the opposite. They are not round. They are poorly struck. Many of them have the dies are larger than the flange, and they show a pretty ugly creature on them, actually, if you ask me. But it's the god Zeus, but not very well executed. There is even a question about who struck these coins. It could have been Ptolemy X, who had been on Cyprus for far longer, between 114 and 106, or Ptolemy IX, who just arrived there sometimes 106 or 105. What is, however, quite clear that these coins should not be here at all. They have absolutely no business to be in Israel. So what are they doing here? The first one to pick up this issue were Chaim Gittler and the late Ala Stein in an article published in 1999 in INJ 13, who collected evidence of such coins found in various sites in Israel and determined that they must have arrived in that campaign of Ptolemy IX. When I was doing my PhD dissertation many years ago, I also ran into these coins all over Galilee, and I was asking myself, what are they doing here? So I made a map, which is now updated. The map on the left is of the Galilee, with the sites where such coins of Ptolemy, I will say coins of Ptolemy IX, although, as I said, they could have been minted by Ptolemy X. It makes no difference for the story. The numbers in the circles represent the number of coins found at each site. The purple circles represent sites that I had known about since I was preparing my PhD. The red spots on both maps are recent additions. Some are recent finds. And for Judea, I relied on my colleague Donald, who gave me some information because he was also interested in these rather strange coins. So if you put them on the map, they are actually, some of the spots show sites that can be connected in one way or another to the campaign of Ptolemy IX. Akko, Ptolemais, of course, it's one of the major stars in the story. Dor down there, that's where the tyrant Zoilus was. So I guess the 42 coins, a pretty large number, found at Dor are to be connected with the campaign, the mini campaign of Ptolemy against Zoilus as part of his initial agreement with Alexander Yanai, before he knew that he was screwed behind his back, excuse me. And there are some coins that were found in two shipwrecks off the coast of Atlit and Megadim. likely a shipwreck of one of the ships that brought Ptolemy to the country. We know he came by ships. We don't know. We don't have any information about how many ships, how they were equipped, if any of them were lost. Apparently, the answer is yes, but we don't know very much about that. Then we also know that later on, when Ptolemy was trying to approach Egypt, he went down along the coast. We don't have Gaza on this because, unfortunately, archaeological information from Gaza is pretty lean, but along the coast, it's quite reasonable to assess that those coins found there have to do with his movement along the coast. Single coins, I'm always suspicious of single coins, so I really don't know what we can say about the single coin in Jerusalem and one in Marsha and a possible one in Pella. The coins in Shechin, only 2 of them, but that ties in very well with the story that we know that Ptolemy attacked Shechin on Shabbat and conquered it. The 7 coins on the lake shore are intriguing. They were found, if many of you may remember, the famous Jesus boat that was discovered in 1986. I was actually the official photographer of the expedition then, and Chaim Gittler worked on the coins. What on earth are 7 Ptolemy 9 coins doing on the lake shore? So jokingly, I would say that after the attack on Shechin, the soldiers went down to cool off in the lake. I really don't have any better suggestion for that. And what are 6 coins doing at Gamla? That really beats me. I have really no explanation. The single coin at Telit Taba, if you press me hard, I can say it may have arrived somehow later on when Alexander Yanai and Cleopatra signed their treaty, but that's a pretty weak proposition because no coins of Ptolemy IX should have been in their hands at the time. So we have all these little sites, and as I said, single coins, I'm always suspicious. I'm trying not to attach much importance to single coins. Even one in Kedesh, Andrea, I have no idea what it's doing up there. And one in Beis Samon, which is a very famous Neolithic site. And I wonder if soldiers of Ptolemy went to see what's going on up there. By the way, on Christelle's maps, Asophon, the place where Yanai was beaten, is shown with clarity, but in fact, no one really knows where Asophon is. It could be anywhere from the southern tip of the Kinneret all the way to the northern tip of the Dead Sea. We have absolutely no idea where that site is. Just to summarize, we have really only 3 sites that can be safely, apart from Akop Ptolemais, 3 sites that can be safely tied to the story. The shipwreck with 76 coins, it cannot have been anything else but a ship of Ptolemy IX. The battle with Zoilos the tyrant in Dor. Shechin, which we know from the story, was attacked, and this is a so-so connection. I wouldn't build a lot on it. But anyway, the fact that we have so many coins spread throughout Galilee, I think gives credence to the story of the campaign that Ptolemy IX took into the Galilee after he was cheated by Janneus, who called his mother against him. Finally, just questions that I don't have answers for. How come we have so many coins lost by the army of Ptolemy IX? I mean, did those people just come with pockets laden with coins and just drop them all over the place? I really have no explanation. And an even more interesting question is, how come we have absolutely no coins that can be attributed to the campaign of Cleopatra? So I guess we should leave these questions to the new generations. Maybe they will have a better answers. I just wanted to show you this little dossier. I discovered it sometimes in the early 90s, and I read it with interest. And it in fact suggests something that at the time, as far as I know, no one really paid attention to. And that is the accession of Alexander Yanai. Traditionally, it has always been put in 103 BC. But this campaign by Ptolemy IX raises interesting questions because, as Christelle showed us very clearly, and as I read in this dossier, Ptolemy was already in possession of Cleopatra by the September 103. And as we know, sieges and warfare never started in winter. They started in the spring at the earliest. So the earliest that Janaeus could have arrived and besieged the Ptolemies was spring of 103. And there is no way he could have accessed the throne already just maybe in January 103 and 2 months later already campaigning in Ptolemies. And Josephus even tells us that he went on the campaign after he made order in the affairs of his kingdom, which I guess took a little more than 1 or 2 months. So in light of this, since the mid-1990s, I've been pushing, at least numismatically, to push back the accession of Yanai to 104 rather than 103. And I think we are headed in a good direction. I think at least all my colleagues here in the country now accept this. And this is what we now think was the accession of Alexander Yanai. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you so much, Danny. I think we can start with questions. If you have any question, you can raise your virtual hand.
Let me say, I wonder if, Christelle, you would say a word or two in response, thinking about the information that Danny just presented. I'm interested in your thoughts or reactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's I love to collaborate with numismatists because they always bring this concrete evidence. So, I mean, I think I didn't know about the shipwreck, and that's very important. I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, I'm kind of surprised by the fact that we don't find coinage of Cleopatra III, in a sense, close to Ptolemais. The fact that we don't find any elsewhere kind of proves the point that she didn't go anywhere except Ptolemais, as we are told by Josephus. But then we would expect coins at least on the coast. So for that part, I can, I'm curious, why. Now, I don't know, it's more, questions for numismatists too. Would that be that she somehow, because she sees Ptolemais in the end from her son, would she use his coins from, soldiers who were paid by Ptolemy IX first? I mean, is that a hypothesis that numismatists would make? So that's one of the questions I had. And then for Janaeus ascension, I mean, Van Dyck was making a whole discussion about this earlier date based on the Seleucid era and whether we start with the Macedonian version of the era or the Babylonian version of the era. And I'm now siding with Danny that indeed what Van Dyck suggested, we should move it to 104 makes more sense because it's so short, the time that we have in 103 to for everything to happen. So, I'm on you with that. So, my remark is that it's great to have all this information about the tour of Ptolemy IX, and I only have half of an answer for why we don't find Cleopatra III's coins. Then I'll stop here.
I would add to Christelle that obviously, when Cleopatra reached Ptolemais and she could take whatever coins she could from her son's soldiers, he would do that. But she couldn't know in advance that that's what the outcome would be. So she couldn't build on that, and she would need finance her campaign somehow. So I have no answer.
I have an observation, and I'm interested especially in various people's responses to it. Danny, in looking at your map and in thinking about the very first comment you made, even before you put your slides up, remember, we're in Seleucid lands, and where are the Seleucids? They're nowhere. But here are the Ptolemies asserting what Christelle is always reminding me was something that they considered to think belonged to them. It was always an accident when this territory fell out of Ptolemaic hands, and whenever they could, they like to get everything straight again and hold on to it. And my general question has to do with the implications of that map and that observation and the Ptolemaic presence, even divided among various fighters, for our understanding of the Hasmonean hold on Galilee. Because Galilee looks, even in this very, very end of the 2nd century, to be in play. And I'm thinking about, Roe, your fortresses, which aren't there yet exactly. They aren't there yet. Tephan's not there. Kara Naphtali is not there. So just thinking about what I am always thinking about, which is the much more slow consolidation of the Hasmonean kingdom than we sometimes think. And the muscular Ptolemaic presence as being something that kept everybody, maybe not the Seleucids so much, but the Ptolemies kept people in line for quite a while.
That's interesting. But what is the evidence for this territory to be Seleucid in that time? I mean,
no, nothing. It's not.
I mean, the Seleucids, as far as we know,
grabs.
they are in Damascus and in Tyre, and I don't know.
They're not in Tyre.
Not in Tyre, in Antioch and Damascus, and the Phoenician cities are already freed, and we know that there are settlements in the Galilee, in the Hula Valley. There's Tel Anafa, and there's Shechin and Judean settlements. So I don't know if this is Seleucid at that time.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's Seleucid territory. I'm saying it's up for grabs. I'm saying when we think about the expansion of the Hasmoneans and Judean settlement in Galilee, what this is suggesting to me is how still Galilee is not part of anybody. Rutem, I see your hand up.
Yeah, no, I think to connect to that, and this is what I really saw coming together from both these talks, is that in a sense, there is what I would say is a sort of the only success of the Seleucid project was creating in that region is making the Levant a border zone where both these dynasties basically act out their fights but are rejected from basically. It's a zone for the different branches of Seleucids and Ptolemies to wage war. But the main thing that is observable there is the militarization of the Levant, the different cities and the constant small wars taking place, and the place of Galilee within that, at least to my reading, with materials within the Judean corpus, the material evidence, is that the Galilee is a border zone of the border zone, is already a sort of frontier of that militarized area, where it's not even clear that the main, let's say, broker or main experts in violence are even the Hasmoneans, as it is in the southern or south to there. And maybe I mean, I don't know, maybe if we want to develop that, but I'll throw in another thing to Christelle, because this really kind of struck me, and whether what do we do with that? But maybe it's a bit too pedantic to this question. Is this sort of source, the pro-Jewish source on Ptolemaic affairs, that positions the Jewish mercenaries as so high up, and the Ptolemies as listening to Jewish concerns, and both and also that the Jews and this sort of the House of Onias is sort of supporting also Hasmonean rule, basically. So I think we have a very interesting echo there of a very distinct source that might be connected also, I mean, if I remember correctly, to some positive twists in Josephus on the Ptolemies in segments that do not parallel First Maccabees on some of the campaigns. So some sort of a favorable Ptolemaic source that Josephus relies on there. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or want to develop that.
And I mean, that was, I mean, my impression first, because, I mean, we hear so, I mean, but that's what, you know, that's what Josephus is interested in. But there's this, you know, assessment at the end that indeed he listened, she listened to Ananias, always kind of somehow bother me. I mean, I was trying to explain and it seems bizarre. And so that's why, you know, I suggested, well, it must be coming from positive take on Cleopatra III, which in a sense, I mean, shows that, I mean, there is all these, you know, negative or in earlier kind of Ptolemaic dynastic conflict, this idea that Ptolemy VIII, and at that point, I mean, Cleopatra III is his wife, they are against the Jews, right? And I was always suspicious of, you know, this kind of assessment that each of the camp would rely on specific ethnic group. And I think that, I mean, we see it's very, if it happened, it was very flexible, because by, you know, later on, Cleopatra III is just like her predecessors, Ptolemy VI and her mother, really connected to the Oniad. Now we have these other groups of Jews who actually join. So it's interesting too, these passages I kind of almost skip in Josephus that shows that, you know, there are different opinions among the Jews in Egypt on which side of the dynastic conflict to follow. So in the end, they may have found themselves facing each other in Ptolemais, if we believe. So I kind of only part, I mean, yes, I think there is a source positive on Cleopatra III, which is kind of ironic in view of, you know, earlier times and earlier episodes where she's rather thought to be, you know, not liking the Jews.
Yes.
Thank you. Uzi?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Question to both of you. First of all, to Dani, if there any numismatic evidence in Transjordan to the campaign of Latirus, and to Christelle, if I don't know, this is so complicated, of this whole net of alliances. And I always wondered this campaign of Latirus from Akop Ptolemais to Jerusalem is so weird. Like it's a huge circle from the coast. He crosses all the Galilee through the Jordan Valley, climbing up. And I know there were different suggestions. Why did he take this long surrounding route? But can something in the map of alliances tell us, maybe shed light on why he chose this weird route?
Okay, I'll answer you first. The truth is that I don't really know what's going on in Transjordan. There's, as you may have seen on my map, there's a single coin with a question mark in Pella. I took that information from Donald. I admit that I never personally researched what's going on in Transjordan, and maybe I should. My hunch is that if there was any coinage of that sort, we would know about it. But you are right in that maybe one of us should really research this a little more deeply. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll have some news for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering at some point, but the timing, to be so granular is difficult, whether, it was a good idea what he did to go on this tour rather than to rush into Egypt. So I think he started because Cleopatra was not yet on her way. From what we can see, it seems that she starts by June of 103, we have one of the papyrus that make clear she's mobilizing her troops. And then, well, I'll just share again that slide, which I'm happy to have people contesting that. But the papyri are the best we have for date. So if she's coming in, if in June she has troops in Pelusium ready to go. At that time, he had already launched his campaign. But so we don't know if he, at some point he decided to rush or no. We just have this very, short information. Then he goes to Egypt, and it's obvious why, because all the troops are with Cleopatra. Of course, they left some troops in Egypt, but most of the army is gone. So then it's a non-answer. I don't know why he took that kind of big tour, but it's his way to punish, Jannaeus by going all around the country. That's the best I have to offer. So it's not really, helpful, but.
Thank you. Noah, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question, kind of a method question. Andrea's projects always helpfully contrast or try to make the bridge between how archaeologists think and historians think. And now I also see kind of thinking numismatically, how that works. And so I went and I tried to find, is there a Ptolemaic coin number, Lorber, for this sore thumb, but it's too late, right? We don't have it in the catalog yet, right? So I asked myself, what would this look like in a catalog? This phenomenon of, if I understood, it's huge, it's a frequently found artifact, and it's crude, right? The flans also looked pretty dumpy. Made me think of Danny's sort of your creation, right? SC 1096, I think it is. I've been looking at it. It's the most commonly found Seleucid coin type ever in Israel.
May well be, yes.
May well be. Donald has said a few more things in print recently about it, and thousands of them have been found, right? And it comes from you, into SC. And so, and there are phenomena like that. There is a phenomenon like that in Seleucid Lydia and Phrygia, by the way. But how, is it anything I know that's 100 years earlier, is it anything, does it like that as a numismatic phenomenon to you? How do you how do you catalog? Like how, where do we start? Do we give it to one king? Do we think of a decentralized process that produces these yucky coins?
That's a great question.
Well, these coins would probably will appear in Cathy Lorber's next volume of the later Ptolemaic kings as a reference. In Israel, we just go by site. Whenever an excavation is published and these coins are in there, they would go under. In fact, you have a good point, because when I catalog these coins, if I write a numismatic report, I always sort of ask myself, do I catalog it with the Ptolemaic coins? Because that's usually the earliest dynasty that is in the catalog, or do I catalog them much later because they are at the end of the 2nd century? So it's a toss-up. I decide on a case-by-case basis where to put them in an excavation report. And by the way, you are rubbing it in that SC 1096. I made the suggestion at the time that it was minted in Ptolemais, but it turned out that I was wrong. But now it seems that it was minted all over the place.
I got it from you right here. Okay.
I
mean, I don't want to take another direction, but right. So it turns out, so this could be the same way. I mean, like, we could find out.
You're right. Okay, so let's give it time, see what comes up.
I'll write you an email.
Can I follow up with a coin question? Well, I also want to go back and say, Christelle, thank you so much for your talk and the wonderful illustrations that can not just remind, but educate some of us, including me. I feel like there should be a movie, right? The War of the Scepters,
Miniseries.
which actually got me thinking about what the desired outcome even was, but that's another conversation. A coin question though, I'm kind of struck by how few, Danny, of those coins there are. I mean, I realize because of where I work, I thought they were fairly commonplace, but to see that you have, what, 75% of them from really 2 locations, and then just a scatter elsewhere. I have 2 questions. One is very practical, which is, what do we know about the Atlit ship? Where if I understand correctly, the shipwreck had 75 coins on it. And then my second question is, do you think that we should be looking for these coins in Sidon?
Looking for the coins, what? Sorry?
Looking for the coins also in Sidon, sort of thinking about the maneuvering around Akko.
Well, first of all, your first question about the shipwrecks, that shipwreck in Atlit, in fact, it's several shipwrecks.
Okay.
Some of my colleagues and I published an article summarizing all the finds that were found in Atlit, including the very famous battering ram, the huge intact battering ram that was on display in Haifa. So it's several shipwrecks and several coin hoards. And in my analysis, I tried to separate those coin hoards. And after I write the article, I'm not obliged to remember everything I wrote down.
Because you already wrote it down. I get it.
You'll have to read it. But we try to. It's quite clear that there are several shipwrecks at that site. And one of them must have been one of the ships of Ptolemy IX.
Okay.
As for Sidon, it's a good question. We don't have very much information on numismatics from many sites. We have Beirut is pretty well covered because Kevin Butcher at the time worked in Beirut and published a fantastic booklet about the coin finds in Beirut. And I have a colleague in Beirut whom I correspond with, and he wrote a lot about local Phoenician coins. And I might just drop him a line and ask him, because I'm not aware of any of these coins being found there. But we are not supposed to see Ptolemy IX go all the way up to Phoenicia. What we could see is Ptolemy X arriving in Phoenicia. And if we would find these coins, it would mean that they arrived by Ptolemy the 10th and not the 9th. But that would complicate matters considerably. So maybe I shouldn't really look into this. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm trying to imagine that first slide of Christelle's made more complicated.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have something from Cathy Lorber, so maybe I'll just share that I skipped when I was collecting all the material, and that's directly, I mean, I'd like to have your opinion on that, about Tyre. I mean, she has this article from 2015 with Ptolemaic coinage, and the year she could show the 23rd and 25th, according to Tyre's era, fits just the war. And so she argues that we have here, coinage from Cleopatra III's army or her son, as he's on his way to Damascus. And she says, well, Tyre being the best place to get with your ship to go to Tyre. Now, I mean, I'm partly with her. I mean, I was wondering, could that be coinage from Ptolemy the IX? Because, I mean, then the question, and that was a question that was asked before about, Tyre and Sidon. Josephus mentions that Sidon would maybe side with Ptolemy the IX. Then we never hear about Sidon again, so we have no idea. So the question, I mean, for me was, can we be sure it's Cleopatra III, or would that be, an alliance that Ptolemy IX makes with Tyre? After all, that's the closest of the cities, and he has troops there. But I don't know, I'm curious to know what the numismatists think about these Tyre coins, and I'll just remove them. But that was, I think, something we may discuss.
But Danny, and if there's any other numismatists on here, I don't know. I also am interested, but when you respond, will you also speak to the metal? Because my question is, are the gold minea a different kettle of fish, as it were, in the coin corpus than silver that gets paid to troops?
Gold coinage in this period was seldom minted, and usually for specific occasions, to commemorate something or for a specific donation. They didn't strike them to hand out to the army or to go buy fish in the market, of course. So I really that's a really enigmatic coin, that one from Tyre. So and I'm not really familiar with it, so I'll have to read up what Cathy wrote about it, because I don't know.
I mean, the commemoration, I think that was the first argument that was made when we knew only about one of the coins. But then when the second one from, I think we learned first about the year 23rd. And then when the second one came, that's when, Cathy Lorber intervened and was wondering if that is to do something with, but that's true. I mean, with the War of the Scepters, they would be some sort of donatives, right? If they are to be understood in the context of the war, that you kind of give that to some important military men to encourage them to fight or thank them for having fought with you. But yeah.
Do we have any evidence of Ptolemy X having been in Tyre at the time when he arrived with the ships?
Now we just know that he goes to Damascus. Now, is Tyre or Sidon, I mean, is Tyre really the best place to go to Damascus, or it could be Sidon too? I mean, you may know.
Because if he landed in Tyre, you could say, okay, the city wanted to honor him and minted these gold minea to honor him in some way.
They were minted in Tyre. Christelle, does Cathy say they were minted in Tyre?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is,
they are, yeah. Mhm.
I wonder where they would get the dyes.
Oh, Tyre didn't have to go anywhere to get die cutters. They had fantastic die cutters throughout the period when the Tyre minted coins, and they could have obtained a copy or a model and do it right there on the spot.
Oh, so oh yeah, well, I know, of course, about Tyrian dyes and die cutters, but now that you say that, so it was Tihi on the obverse, the reverse, they could take that reverse from a silver Ptolemaic coin and then make a new die and then do a Maneon?
No, because as far as I recall, double cornucopia appeared only on gold Ptolemaic coins, not on silver coins.
I have a question. I have two questions. One for the historians. So maybe Christelle and maybe Rotem, if you have some comments, is about Sepphoris. What's the story of the failure in Sepphoris? Do we think it's a real event, or is it Josephus trying to insert this city to the story because of Shechin? And the other question is to Danny, is about Ashkelon. I saw that in Donald's catalog, besides the coin you mentioned, there are a few early Janaeus coins. So I was wondering if there's somehow a possibility that they arrived in the events of the War of the Scepters to the city.
Christelle, your turn
Yeah.
first.
Well, I'm afraid I don't really have a good answer to that. I mean, he is, kind of, in a sense, happy to show that Ptolemy IX was defeated at some point. So, I was not, wondering why it's there. And we know, I mean, it's basically one line, I think, in the account. And then what he's really interested in is Azophon. And I mean, what we can learn from Azophon from, the conversation we had a little bit earlier is that indeed for Janaeus was still a realization that, these the Ptolemaic armies is still something that would be difficult to defeat. So, or at least, a stalemate is possible, but it's also a lesson that it would be difficult to expand, within the big kingdoms. But for Sepphoris, no, I don't know. Maybe some of you has a better answer.
Rotem?
Okay.
No,
Yes.
not me. Something to think about, definitely.
Danny, do you want to comment
About your question about Ashkelon? Remember that Ashkelon is a big city. So when I find coins in a big city which theoretically shouldn't be there, I'm not upset, because a big city sees traffic, people come in, come out, go out. Quite a few Hasmonean coins in Akop Ptolemais as well, although not a single Hasmonean king ever set foot inside the city. There was trade. It's a big city. People went to the port, they went to the market, so Hasmonean coins could have arrived just by any means to Ashkelon. I think rural sites are much more indicative of the coin circulation in the area and who's in charge, rather than big cosmopolitan cities.
Christelle, can I ask you a question about the Jews in the Ptolemaic army at this time? I think you're on mute somehow.
Yes. I mean, the pieces of evidence we have, we rely a lot on Josephus and the story of the Onyad and so on. And then we know about it's a little bit earlier, but the Polyteuma of the Jews in Heracleopolis, so that's under, it's right at the death of Ptolemy VI, and it's basically under Ptolemy VIII, which is, one more, so it's, from 144 to the 130s. And so we have this Jewish group, and we are pretty certain they are soldiers there, organized. And we have Idumeans, we have a polytoima of the Idumeans in the 110s, which is probably people who escape from Hasmoneans push. So the Ptolemies are actually relying a lot on Judean troops, and we see them in the 1st century still. And when Ptolemy XII comes back, I mean, they are loyal to the Ptolemies. We still have some under Cleopatra. So they are an important, from that, I mean, in a sense, they seem to be important in the army now, in terms of numbers. I mean, we have to guess, but I still think that Egyptian troops from Egyptian or mixed Greek and Egyptian origins are the largest group, but they are groups that the Ptolemies are relying on. Yeah.
And can I ask a follow-up question about that? Are those Jewish or Judean soldiers in the Ptolemaic army Egyptian born? Do we have any from the papyri or from? And one of the reasons that I mean, I'm asking in general, but Danny, I'm thinking about that little breadcrumb trail of Ptolemaic coins across Galilee, or, and the odd rural site. And honestly, in my head, one of the things, or one of the visions, so nobody can laugh at me now when I'm about to say, I think about soldiers every Friday hitchhiking to go home. I think about guys and girls who are posted someplace, but they get a little time off and they go home. And I'm just kind of wondering about that little breadcrumb trail of coins.
I didn't think it worked that way way back then.
Well, that's why I was asking Christelle if we have any evidence that people are born someplace else and then become conscript. They were mercenaries in the army.
I mean, we cannot be sure. I mean, but I'm always assuming that you have both, you have, and this polytoima and the date is not completely surprising in the, that I'm assuming that Jews left indeed in the years, or following the Maccabean revolt. So we have an influx of first generation, but there were already Jews in the army from the beginning, and some were settlers. So you have, and that's why, you have this very diversity of communities across the country, and therefore, Josephus comments that that they are taking different sides in the conflict is not so surprising. They have, their preferences in terms of which kings they follow. So I think, we have a mixture of both, but we can never be sure.
Thank you. Is that a question from Noah?
Yeah, Noah, you wrote in the chat. You want to ask it?
No, not a question. I just put in a
another numismatist just
trail,
joined
another trail. Came to mind was the epitaphs from, I guess it's near Leontopoulos, Tel El Yehudiya. These like metrical Greek epitaphs that are supposed to all be Jews, but it's very thin, the whole thing, but it's a source.
Yeah, that's true, and this is for this. It doesn't completely coincide. It does not coincide with the polytoima. I think there are only a few that are dated from the Leontopolis. Inscription. I think the earliest is from the 110th. I think, but it doesn't. It's not a problem, but it's probably another community. I think that is it Sylvie Honigman. She's looked into, or several people have looked into onomastic traditions, and so we can see differences between different communities. But yeah, that's one more group, and some certainly must be mercenaries. I mean, for the Polyteima, we are pretty sure, because they are, you know, next to the harbor, they are soldiers.
Any more questions?
I mean, I have one for you all, actually, about Gaza and the siege of Gaza, if you know more. So people have been debating a lot. The questions being, you know, Josephus, where I stopped my account, basically goes very quickly on Aeneas' conquest, a couple of cities, and then he gets stuck on Gaza, which is kind of will be this big achievement. And Josephus mentioned that his troops first are defeated, and they believe that Ptolemy is still in the city, and that, you know, partly why, you know, they are scared. So that information suggests that it must be still in 102, because by the spring, Ptolemy the ninth is back to Cyprus. And then we know the siege, I think, takes 10 months or a year or something like that. So people had been, you know, thinking struggling, because, you know, how can he do all this conquest and then Gaza, so pushing to 100. And then there is this article about coinage, and new coinage evidence suggests that it cannot happen before 5 or 4. So first, I have, you know, question for Danny. Do we know more? Do you agree with the numismatic evidence? And second, I mean, my guess to reconciliate both would be that there may be two events, and, you know, Josephus is conflating things, that there is a first attempt by Aeneas to get the city early on, when soldiers could have believed Ptolemy was still there, and then, you know, there is finally a later attempt that actually end up in 94 into the conquest of the city. So I don't know if you have any thought on that, and if my hypothesis is more than 2 cents.
Well, numismatically, I would actually ask my colleague who joined us a few minutes ago, Donald, because he's more versed in what's going on in the south of the country. I'm a Galilee person, so maybe he'll step in.
I'm trying to. Control A. Here we are. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I may be an expert, but I don't remember enough details. I edited that article that you're referring to by Oliver Hoover, where he says 95/4, and I was convinced. I also, well, maybe offline, I will send you a manuscript that's going to be out in another few months from myself about that period, and in general about the reliability of the sources, particularly Josephus' sources on Janaeus. So I'll be happy to send that to you. It should be out. It's in a Festschrift coming out.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm really interested in, and yeah, there I think the last article was by Kushner Stein on the late Hellenistic coins of Gaza and the date of the conquest.
In that case, Oliver Hoover is much more recent.
Okay.
You're not familiar with it? I'll get you the information.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, but so apparently they agree. But I would like to check the other the article by Hoover. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
I want to say thanks so much to both of you, and to all of the questions. The whole episode of the War of Scepters, or War of the Scepters, is something that has acted for me like a giant placeholder. All sorts of stuff was happening. I can't keep it all straight. those were the two things that I thought about it. And one of the points that I have, or 2 points that I have so clearly taken away, thanks to you, is first of all, the coast remained completely part of the Ptolemaic or Ptolemaic Seleucid milieu. You know, for those of us that think archaeologically and look at the map of Israel, the coast is part of that. But from the point of view of the Ptolemies, or even those battling Seleucids in Damascus, the coast was its own thing. And it was very, very much in play all the way through this period. And then, Christelle, your great conclusion, which is that the winner of this war was Judæus. Which then makes me think so much more about all of your forts, because how this kind of cleared the way for him. So I have clarity where before I had confusion, and I really am grateful to both of you. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed myself, and if you see any similarities to modern happenings, it's at your risk.
Thank you, Danny.
Hey, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll be in touch for future events.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.